And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange! 125!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NSF's live coverage of a crewed mission. For once, it is not a Starlink, and we will be sending 4 astronauts to the International Space Station today on the Axiom 3 mission. I see all of your guys' 5x5s in chat. Thank you very much for that. And I'll be your host for today's mission, Trevor Sesnick, a writer and reporter here with NSF. And thankfully, I am not alone. Today, I have 2 wonderful guests. First of all, Alex. Alex, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, and I will say this is quite a big day because this is going to be the first human spaceflight for SpaceX in 2024, of many more to come, and boy, is it going to get exciting this year.
Yeah, that it certainly will. And also joining us from the field today, in case you're worried that there wouldn't be any puns on the stream, don't worry, because Sawyer is also here. Sawyer, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. The clock is counting. The rocket is out on the pad. The crew is on their way there. And don't forget, when you have your questions, feel free to Axiom to us.
Oh my gosh. That is a good point, though. If you have any questions about this mission or just in general, tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we will hopefully answer it. As you can see in the top left hand corner, we are about 2 hours away from launch. So at this point, since it's a crewed mission, right, the timeline is a little bit longer than it usually is for a Starlink mission. So Alex, what has been done so far, and just give us a rundown on today's launch.
Yeah, so a few hours ago, the crew basically arrived at Kennedy Space Center. They went out to the Falcon support building nearby of LC-39A, where they suited up. Then they walked out to the rocket. Well, not walked out, but actually drove to the rocket a few hundred meters away from them, and then they went up. They are right now strapped inside Dragon, and they are running through the usual procedures that we know of already. By this time, they usually try to do final checkouts. They try to make sure that all of the seats and the suits and everything fits together, and so they are running right now through all of those.
And on that note, SpaceX just tweeted that the crew seats are rotated, suit leak checks complete, and comms checker complete. So that's a good indication that they're still continuing on towards today's launch. So Alex, what about recovery on this mission? Can you tell us about the spacecraft, the booster, the recovery assets, and all that?
Yeah, so this is an interesting mission because this is going to be, I think it's the first time that we're going to have a Crew Dragon and a booster that have already flown before, both at the same time. So this booster is B1080. It previously flew for the first time on Axiom 2 mission. Then it launched Euclid, a Starlink Group 6-11, and a Starlink Group 6-24. So this is going to be its 5th flight. And so on its first flight, it flew with the Axiom 2 mission, and that was also the previous flight of this capsule. This capsule is serial number 12, basically 212-3, basically meaning that it is the 3rd flight of Capsule 12 of Dragon 2, and that is also nicknamed the Freedom capsule. So this is Crew Dragon Freedom, and it is going to fly on its 3rd flight. And again, the previous flight of this capsule also was Axiom 2. So these two booster and capsule couple, they were already flown about 7, 8, 9 months ago. It's a bit complicated because it was a while ago. I think it was in May or something like that. But yeah, it's a really nice coincidence that we have here that both the booster and the Crew Dragon were flown before on the same mission. And I think again, I think this is the first time this has happened. But I will say, it is not the first. It is also. Well, I guess we'll get there later when we go through the crew. But there's another person also flying for the second time on a Crew Dragon. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, and then the first stage booster, which is very exciting as well, is that now they have this thing of being able to recover back to land the booster instead of having to land it on a drone ship. And so this booster is going to land back at landing zone 1, and hopefully we're going to get those sonic booms here as we cover the launch. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, that's a good point, but there are still two recovery assets, actually multiple recovery assets downrange for Dragon recovery in case of an event. So I believe Shannon and Megan are both available if need be, correct?
Yeah, and also I believe there's also a sort of a speedboat from Axiom that they have already deployed a bit downrange. So that's probably in case of, any anomaly happens, they are able to support and things like that. Hopefully we don't get to see that today, but definitely good to have it just in case, because, it's always good to be prepared.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, Sawyer, how is the weather out there? It looks a little cloudy, but is it looking like it'll be good for launch?
Yeah, the weather right now, as you mentioned, as we hit the T-2 hour mark, is a little bit on the cloudy side. The cloud ceiling is very low, so that's why it looks extra cloudy on our camera views here too. They're kind of thin though, so hopefully it'll clear out a little bit. Every now and then we see some blue sky, but otherwise there's a light breeze. It's pretty warm. The flag is flapping just a little bit, and weather-wise, we are looking good. In terms of the official forecast, they are 80% go, which is due to the potential of flying through thick clouds, which, again, these are thinner, and the potential for precipitation, because there's been spotty showers kind of around the area. The only other area of concern in terms of weather was the Ascent abort corridor. Basically, they have different spots along the Atlantic Ocean going all the way up the coastline of if they need to abort for some reason, there's a spot where they can plan to land safely. They keep an eye on the weather in those locations so you don't accidentally have to abort into 20-foot seas. That is at a low to moderate risk, but we'll see how those are going as we continue in the count.
Yeah, and that's a good point that as this mission progresses after liftoff, we will hear a series of callouts between the Dragon spacecraft and the ground operators at SpaceX, called like 1 Alpha, then 1 Beta, and then more in the second stage flight as well. And those are all targeted zones of an abort. So if an abort happened, then they would target these specific areas in the ocean that Sawyer just talked about, and they want to make sure that if in the unlikely event that that happens, that they can safely recover the spacecraft and the crew. Anyway, that brings us to the next important question. Who is flying on today's Dragon? And apparently one is flying for the second time already?
Yeah, so for this mission we'll have, we're gonna start with Alper. Okay, so one of the mission specialists is gonna be actually, I think it is one of the first, if not the first, astronaut from Turkey, which is quite exciting because that's another new sort of person up into space, and also another country being able to launch people up into space and through commercial means, which is not a first, but it's one of the first, I guess. And that is something that at least with Crew Dragon and Falcon 9, it is being enabled by that. So we're gonna have mission specialist.
Oh, did we lose Alex?
Yeah, I thought that was a satellite connection drop there, but appears we did for a moment.
Yeah, So as
So,
Alex was
yes.
saying, oh, go ahead, Sawyer.
No, I was going to say, he was mentioning that, to confirm, yes, he would be the first Turkish citizen in space. He's, as you were talking about, piloting the F-16s, and the Turkish Air Force also has some commercial piloting experience as well. And he actually has degrees from the Turkish Air Force Academy in Istanbul and the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So a little U.S. connection there, but more of that European love on this flight. And there's a lot of European connections here.
Yeah,
Trevor, you
indeed.
want to take the next one?
Sure. The next astronaut, as you see on stream, is Marcus Wandt, who is another mission specialist on Axiom 3. This will be his first flight into space, and he was chosen as a reserve astronaut in ESA's 2022 selection. So another novice, but the rest of the crew does have flight experience, with the pilots on today's mission having done one suborbital flight. Walter Villadei, I think. I actually
Villadei.
don't. Villadei. Alex, you're back. Take over.
Yeah, sorry, my computer just decided to restart for some reason. But yeah, so we have this pilot. One of the things that I'm really excited about this is that he actually already flew into space with Virgin Galactic. We actually streamed his flight back with Virgin Galactic, and this is gonna be I think it's probably about one of the first times that a commercial astronaut is first flown on a commercial suborbital spaceflight and then on a commercial orbital spaceflight, which is quite interesting because if you think about it, in the future we're probably going to need some kind of training ahead of time, and kind of sounds like perhaps a suborbital flight might be good, but we'll see. He's part of the Italian Air Force, and there you can see the big guy, as I call him, because he's like the most experienced person in the crew, but he's also the person that I said before that is flying for a second time on Crew Dragon. This is going to be the first person that is going to be flying on a Crew Dragon twice. It is not the same Crew Dragon though. He flew first on Endeavour on Axiom 1, and then this is going to be Freedom on Axiom 3. He spent 275 days across 4 different missions, and now it's going to add a 6th spaceflight. So four missions before Axiom, and then one with Axiom, and then this is gonna be its 6 overall with Axiom 3. And again, this is like one of the big guys, I guess, that retired from NASA a while ago, and now he's with Axiom. One of the things as well that I would like to point out, though, he holds a double nationality with United States and also Spain, and that means that all of the participants on this flight have European, or in some way Europeans, and so this is going to be the first all-European crew on a space flight.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, he'll be the first person to fly on Dragon twice, which was previously thought that Jared Isaacman may get that record, but after Polaris Dawn got pushed a little further into this year, I believe they're now targeting no earlier than April. He is taking the record from Jared, but I'm sure Jared will be the first to, I don't know, maybe fly 3 times. And with that, Sawyer, how long is this mission going to last?
Just a little quick update. They have already closed the door, the hatch of Dragon. They have already completed the leak checks, and all of the leak checks are completed, so they're good to go.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. So then, Sawyer, how long are we expecting this mission to last, with the caveat that it could always get extended in the event that, you know, splashdown weather is not good and they would want to wait for the weather to get a little bit better?
Right. This mission's expected to last about 2 weeks, like you said, give or take, because Axiom 1 actually had to stay up there a few extra days because of bad weather, whereas Axiom 2 was only 10 days. But they're kind of going for right in the middle here of about 2 weeks, and if they launch today as planned, the docking will happen Saturday, and then they can do all their work aboard the ISS.
Awesome. Well, now that we have the rundown of everything that's going on this mission, we'll get to some of your guys' questions. Starting off with a little bit of support. Eric Fraser gifted a Red Team membership, Tim gifted a Red Team membership, and Jim Cavett gifted a Red Team membership. All of those are common names around this channel, so thank you very much for your repeated support. And if you got one of those memberships, make sure you thank them and hope you enjoy the perks. Now, Musical Wolves is asking, how long extra training was required for this Axiom mission compared to the Inspiration 4 mission, since Inspiration 4 didn't dock to the ISS? So Sawyer, do we have a good idea of what training NASA requires versus what training SpaceX requires?
Well, the important thing to note here is that for something like Inspiration 4, those were astronauts for SpaceX. These are astronauts from Axiom Space. In fact, just a few hours ago when the crew arrived, they do an official handover where Axiom hands over their astronauts to SpaceX for this launch. So they have their own individual training that they do with Axiom Space at their headquarters. Obviously, the practice that they do with their science experiments that they're planning on doing, with the researchers. I'm sure there's some coordination as well with NASA, since they're going to be using some of that equipment that's already aboard the ISS on the US side of the station. And then on top of that, they will likely train with SpaceX as well for the systems on board. Crew Dragon, obviously the commander and pilot as well, needing to make sure they know how to fly the vehicle, maneuver the vehicle, all the ins and outs of it. So it really is a joint process between all of the different agencies.
Right. And then I think there's also a little bit of a difference between, like you were saying, the Inspiration 4 mission was purely a low Earth orbit mission, so it didn't dock to the ISS. So all of the training that they need for the ISS was not needed, but then I think there was some additional training on how to use the cupola that they installed and whatnot on that Dragon spacecraft, which is not applicable to today's launch. So I think these training schemes are still pretty dependent on the mission. And, you know, the extreme example of that is if you look at the upcoming Polaris Dawn mission, where they're conducting the first EVA on Dragon. There's a ton of training that they've been doing purely for that EVA. But good question, and thank you for your continued support, Musical Wolves. Clayton became a Red Team member. RC Horseman gifted 10 Red Team memberships. Coco gifted a Red Team membership. And then RC Horseman gifted another 5 Red Team memberships. Dylan gifted a Red Team member, and Dave became a Red Team member, and Tuna became a Red Team member. So welcome all to our membership program. And now we have a super chat from Richard saying, message from the capsule. Right, did you remember the sandwiches? I hope they have some sort of good food before taking off for sure.
Did someone say sandwiches? Brings me back to the Gemini program, for those who know, when Gus Grissom, I believe it was, snuck a corned beef sandwich on board and ate it in space, and that's when they realized bread is terrible in space because it's all crumbs, and the crumbs just float everywhere. So there is no bread in space. It's all basically like tortillas that don't create as many crumbs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a really important consideration in all of the food, is that you don't want crumbs getting in the air systems and whatnot. Let's see. Going to some of your guys' questions as we are coming up on an hour and 45 minutes from launch. Linus is asking, is the first stage going to land on landing zone?
Yes. It's gonna be one of those weird ones. Actually, it's not gonna be that weird, because over the next couple of months, we're gonna see a few return to launch site landings. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, and a reminder that this is with a slightly different profile for landing, correct?
It should be. We are used to now these sort of flights having a 1-3-1 landing, where they fire up the center engine, then they fire 2 additional engines during the landing burn, and then they shut them down. So those 2 extra engines, what they do is they are able to light the engines closer to the ground. So they'll let the atmosphere do more of the work. And also with those two engines, it seems counterintuitive, but it actually spends less fuel because you're basically tapping on the brakes quite hard, right? That's sort of the idea. And then they shut down those two on the last few seconds of that descent to be able to descend on just one single engine. That's a more fuel efficient landing burn. It's not usually done because those extra 3 engines, so basically the extra 2 engines, put on a lot of forces through the booster, but still it is valuable to be able to return back to the launch site compared to a drone ship, because right now, for example, we just had so basically just read the instructions is performing maintenance at Charleston, and then we also have ASOG right now, which is probably also undergoing work at Port Canaveral. Therefore, both drone ships are currently undergoing maintenance and upgrades and checkouts ahead of the busy launch cadence that SpaceX is wanting to have in 2024. So this is one of the advantages of these RTLS landings, that they cannot, they don't need the marine assets for these ones.
Right. Also helps that they don't need any fairing recovery.
Those are also being they are also being worked on right now. I think Doug just went out also to Charleston. There is also Bob. So both ferry recovery vessels are there, currently undergoing maintenance and upgrades and things like that. I think Ikodanchev tweeted about that just a few hours ago. So you could probably check that out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do an RTLS Starlink or something like that while they're working on both drone ships, but we'll see. Here's a question for you, Sawyer, from Hazelnut. They're asking, Sawyer once in a video said that rockets cannot fly while it's raining. Could you explain this, please? What's the difference between the rocket being out in the rain on the pad and why rockets can't fly through that?
That's actually a really good question. Yeah, they call it the flight through precipitation rule is the official weather term for it. Basically, on the ground, it's rain. If it hits you on the head, it's not that bad. Imagine now going 2 or 3 times the speed of sound, piercing through the rain, is not going to be great. In addition to that, the reason that there's the rain and the cloud rule is that the rain are typically from the cumulonimbus type clouds, and those are the ones that create thunder, lightning, things like that. There is a phenomena, as we've seen with Apollo 12, where a vehicle flying through a cloud can create enough static that it will actually create lightning, and the lightning can strike the vehicle. So it's, again, for those like fancy terms, triboelectrification. So it's something that needs to be watched out for. If you don't want to create your own lightning going through those kind of clouds that will zap all of your computers.
Right. This will be something that will be interesting to pay attention to long term, to see how Starship and other vehicles that are trying to fly, like an airliner, deal with this, because right, in an airliner, if lightning strikes it, it's really not that big of a deal, is my understanding. So I assume rockets will eventually reach that point as well, where they'll be able to fly through some of these conditions. But for now, better safe than sorry as always.
And airplanes actually on their wings and on some of the parts of it have lightning deflectors, basically things that are meant to take the lightning so that it doesn't hit the plane and damage any of the instrumentation on board. And you're also talking about, Mach 0.8 as opposed to this will end up Mach 25. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a difference in velocity. Going to some more of your guys' questions. Westy the Third, a regular around here, is asking, how long before the capsule docks to the International Space Station? And then I'm going to add on to that question for you, Alex, one from Xbar, who is asking, why does it take days for Dragon to get to the ISS compared to Soyuz only taking a couple of hours?
Yeah, we get that question very often. So I'm going to answer first the question about when it is set to arrive. So right now the docking is set to occur on January 20th at 5:15 a.m. Eastern Time. That will be 10:15 UTC. So about 2 days from now, a little bit under 2 days, about 1.5 days, basically. And now the reason why it takes this long, it's down to orbital mechanics. And now, why Soyuz is able to do it in a matter of hours. Also, the Zhenzhou spacecraft from the Chinese is also able to do it in a few hours. The thing is, there's nothing technical that avoids Crew Dragon from reaching the ISS within a few hours. We've actually seen, I think, the shortest time between launch and docking has been around 8 to 9 hours, or at least at one point was planned to be 8 to 9 hours, but was cancelled or something like that. I don't have all of the times though. I'm planning on making a spreadsheet about that sometime soon. But definitely, it's not anything technical. It's more about the preferences that one decides to have, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to orbital mechanics, right? Orbital mechanics dictates where the ISS is going to be located, where the orbit of the ISS is going to be located, and therefore when you launch. And so when you launch will determine when are you going to be docking to. And the problem is, these fast rendezvous times are very unique and very uncommon, so to speak, right? They occur, but they occur very, very less likely than these, for example, 1 day or 1.5 days or even 2 day rendezvous times. For example, 2 day rendezvous times occur pretty much every single day. Depending on the sort of day, it could go a bit down, a little bit up in the time. But in order to be able to launch in a matter of few hours from the ground all the way to the ISS, you really need specific dates. And what that means in cloudy Florida, as we see in today, is that sometimes choosing a date like that is very unique and very special, it may not work out precisely because of the weather and things like that may scrub your launch. And so, for just the sake of making it easy for planning purposes, it's better to just let the day of launch to decide what else is going to be the rendezvous time. Sometimes, for example, when it is something like 2.5 days or something like that, they avoid those launch dates and they skip maybe one launch day. We've seen that in past times, where when it's too long, they just prefer not to launch that day and they skip. So it all comes down to those special conditions that need to be met. Additionally, with that, we also have, for example, for Soyuz, the Russians fired the engines on either the Progress or the Space Service Module on the ISS to adjust the ISS orbit. The Chinese also adjust the orbit of the Tiangong so that they can basically tweak its orbit so that it pretty much lines up everything with the day of launch that they want. So that's a really long explanation, but again, this is a very often a question that we get very often, and again, it's not about the technical the technical parts of it. It's just that it's more convenient to do it this way, especially when Crew Dragon is more spacious than Soyuz, for example. So it's not like you need to arrive fast to the ISS.
Yeah, that is a good point. Whenever you see photos of the cosmonauts and astronauts in Soyuz, you better like the person next to you because they're right in your face. Anyway, moving on, I was just going through my spreadsheet and I realized something somewhat interesting. Tomorrow, January 19th, was the day that Crew Dragon IFA launched. So it's not quite on the same day as IFA, but very close for Axiom and IFA being on the same day. I think IFA is still probably my favorite SpaceX launch ever, but there's a lot of competition. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Longhair 2012 is asking, new to crew launches, when does the crew usually come out? So Sawyer, could you walk us through some of the preparations that SpaceX had with the crew before we went live?
Sure, yeah. So before we went live, the crew arrived here at the Kennedy Space Center. They've been in sort of a quarantine, not even just because of the pandemic, but just you don't want to bring any unknown germs up to the International Space Station. So they then get a ride in these special fancy Teslas with a vanity plate on the back that changes for the mission. This one said, "Let's go," except the E was a 3, since this is Axiom 3. They then go into SpaceX's suit-up quarters, where they get their spacesuits on and donned and fit checked, make sure everything is working, everything is secure. They do their traditional card game, where the commander has to, I forget if it has to win or lose, before they then go out into the vehicles and actually drive out to the launch pad. Once they're at the launch pad, they went up the elevators and did their final phone call to any family and friends before boarding the Crew Dragon capsule. They get on board, their seats then go into their launch position. They do all of their communication checks, all of their leak checks again within the capsule, and then they close the door, and that side door hatch does not open until they have splashed down in either the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico after the completion of their mission, because to get on board the ISS, they use the docking adapter, which is inside the nose cone.
Right, and I guess now is a good time to talk about some of the events that will be coming up. So we have about 45 minutes until they start happening, but it'll all start with the launch director verifying their go for propellant load. And immediately after that, the crew access arm, which you can see at the top of your screen, will retract from the vehicle. And as soon as that happens, 3 minutes later, the Dragon launch escape system will be armed, and that'll be at T-minus 39 minutes. Then from that time forward, it follows a very similar schedule to a normal Falcon 9 launch, with RP-1 and liquid oxygen being loaded, and then at T-minus 20 minutes, we'll have the normal T-minus 20-minute vent, where they will start cooling down the lines on the transport erector. And then it'll go into final stage 2 liquid oxygen filling. The only small addition is, as you can see, at T-minus 5 minutes, Dragon transitions to internal power. And then, of course, there will be all of the added communication between the Dragon spacecraft and the ground controllers, which normally they have some fun, like, yay, we're go for launch message, which is always fun to hear. So that's, as I said, starts in about 45 minutes. So, Alex, what gets done between now and the crew access arm being retracted and them verifying their go for launch?
Yeah, so right around now, or in a few minutes, we're not gonna see it, we're not gonna hear anything, but they should be undergoing basically the what it's called engine bleed checks, where they just flow a little bit of the RP1 through the engine so that they are able to confirm that all of the pre-valves and everything are going to work during ignition of the engines, because it's a bit similar to the engine chill, but it's not the engine chill. It's just basically to make sure that everything works ahead of the ignition in about 94 minutes from now. Also at this same time, they should also have been already undergoing clearance of the launch pad and the blast danger area, because all of that ground crew that we saw before, they have to get out of the crew access arm, they have to leave the launch pad area, and so, because, in about 93 minutes, that rocket is going to lift off, so they need, even before that, it's also going to be fueled, so they need to clear the area. Now, speaking of the fueling, around 1 hour before the flight, there's usually the final weather briefing that occurs between the launch weather officer and the launch director. They study that, they go through that, and they basically decide whether it's good to go or not. Then they go through the final pre-launch or I guess pre-fueling go no-go polls with all of the launch controllers, the mission controllers at Hawthorne as well. And so that's going to be one of the few things that we're going to hopefully hear. I don't know if we're going to have the countdown audio for that, but anyways, we're definitely going to try. And one of the exciting things about that is that usually there's some kind of back and forth between the crew, because this time around there's a crew on board, right? So usually the commander says a few words and here and there, and we get to hear a little bit of what they think ahead of that launch. We're also going to get some kind of words from the commander once we get closer to the T0, around T minus 5 minutes or so, I think it is, when they get that final comm check, so to speak. But yeah.
And
Right.
speaking of the comms, I think it's important to note they have multiple ways that they can communicate. Again, redundancy, which all the space companies love. So part of the testing before launch is they will try and talk between the capsule and launch control. They have just their regular, kind of VHF, UHF antennas. They have air to ground. So again, like it sounds, it goes through the air. They have space to ground, where they use the TDRS network, the Tracking Data Relay Satellite Network, to be able to communicate. So they have multiple different ways to talk to the crew, and they go through all of those different communication checks as well.
Yeah, and that's why those communication checks take several minutes, because they check every single one of those channels in both directions to make sure that, in case one goes down, Sawyer was saying they're still able to communicate. Anyway, I have a question for you, Alex, that I imagine several other people are wondering. So on Starlink missions and most traditional missions from SpaceX, we see that max Q is about 1 minute and 12 seconds after liftoff. When on today's flight, it's about 58 seconds after liftoff. Why is max Q so much earlier?
Well, it kind of depends on the trajectory that they are choosing for this one, or even the thrust profile. I really haven't looked back on previous crew flights. To be fair, this kind of question was a bit unexpected, so I didn't prepare anything about that, obviously. But it's not unheard of for them to switch. Like, I've seen max Q times before 1 minute on multiple occasions before. It's not the norm, as you mentioned, but it is not unheard of, and usually depends on the trajectory that the rocket will follow, the thrust profile that they decide to follow. Because you can think of this, for example, if the launch goes a bit more flat, for example, instead of being lofted, then you encounter thicker atmosphere for longer, and so the max Q could be perhaps later, because your max Q, like, the value of that max Q might be higher than a regular mission that might be more lofted. So it kind of depends on the trajectory, and it also depends on the thrust profile. Again, if you're thrusting hard, for example, the max Q may come earlier because you're thrusting before, right? And so you're like going faster through the atmosphere, and you're speeding through faster, so you get to a max Q earlier. But it can also depend on multiple other factors as well, like conditions of the wind or whatever. But for this one, I don't think it changes much. But those two main factors, the trajectory and the thrust profile, do play a significant role in that, at least from the previous missions that I've seen that do have had a max Q time before 1 minute.
Right, I knew you would give a good answer even if it was an unexpected question. Anyway, to some of your guys' generous support, and with some questions, Cat Herder gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Introverse Uncharted became a Red Team member. Jim Cavett, another regular around here, loved to see NSF during the school day. Hopefully you're paying attention to your classes, but we are always here. Maya gifted a Red Team membership, and Nigel became a Capcom member. Thank you all for joining our membership programs, and if you received any of those gifted memberships, like, seriously, just thank that person in chat. Check out the exclusive photos and videos, and sometimes even live streams that we do. Because really, our membership program is a very large part of why we're able to do what we're able to do, along with all of the generous super chats and orders from shop.nasaspaceflight.com. So thank you really from the bottom of all of our hearts for just tuning in, giving us likes, and if you're able to give financial support, thank you very much. Now to some super chats from JD Brown, asking if LC-39A and LC-39B were comparable to famous landmarks, what would they measure to be the same height as in terms of stories high? This sounds like Sawyer probably has a good comparison off the top of his head.
What exactly am I comparing?
what compare 39A and 39B's heights to like famous landmarks? Like it is one Sears Tower tall or something like that.
I really doubt that's the case.
Yeah, that would be
'Cause
way
that's
too tall.
too tall, yeah. That's
Yeah.
too tall.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 255 feet tall for the fixed service structure. So, I don't know any buildings that are that tall off the top of my head. Let me see if I can do a quick search on it. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I'm on the
Um,
Wikipedia page of list of tallest buildings in the United States.
It also depends on
Um,
what you call the height. Because then again, LC-39B, while it has the mobile launcher one right now, it doesn't always have mobile launcher one on it. So technically, the height is like the height of the ramp, which is about 20 meters. That's about the same height of the OLM. Starbase, by the way.
Found it. With
Guess
thanks to
why?
Julia. With thanks to Julia, I found best comparison is it's about as tall as the Statue of Liberty if you include the base.
Ah, I
Makes
knew you could
sense.
come up with something. Thank you, Julia, who's also out at the launch pad, along with Max. So all of those views that you're seeing, thanks Sawyer, Max, and Julia for. And then also, I don't think I ever mentioned at the start of the stream, but Mr. Kevin Michael Reed is operating today's stream, who put in the control our back channel. I hope she's not at the pads. Yeah, near the pad, I should emphasize.
I would like to
not
say,
at
yes,
the pad.
Julia has been removed from the keep out zone, kicking and screaming, but she is here.
Yeah. Anyway, continuing on with some of your guys' support. Clayton with a super chat. During the Gemini launch, he had hid it from NASA, referring to the sandwich that Sawyer was talking about earlier. Papa Hawkeye is asking, in case of Dragon abort during flight, what vessels are in or near the range for recovery?
I will have to exactly look up which one is which, but I know Megan and Shannon are out there. I know one of them goes to the Gulf, and then the other one goes out to the Atlantic. Again, I will have to look up which one went to where. And then also, as I mentioned before, Axiom has this sort of a speedboat that they have deployed, and so that also helps. I believe that if the abort happens more downrange than off the coast of Florida, basically the military steps in because it's like a rescue mission, and so that is one of their duties also to have on this kind of mission. And I believe, in fact, that's sort of one of the things that they are assured when these things happen. So, like if for example the downrange abort were to be off the coast of Ireland, because that's one of the basically one of the splashdown abort sites is off the coast of Ireland. That far away, they don't have any boats or anything to deploy, but the military can deploy assets to that location very quickly. Let's put it that way.
Right, and if I remember correctly, for some of the really far downrange options, like Shannon, they actually have some, I believe it's some countries from really far downrange in Europe also help out, correct?
And I do want to point out, when you say Shannon, you're talking about Shannon, Ireland, which is near one of the
Yes.
abort sites, not the vessel Shannon.
Yes,
Exactly.
good point. Yeah.
It's Shannon, Ireland, and then there's the Shannon Crew Dragon recovery vessel. That's a bit confusing, but I guess that's probably one of the callouts that we may hear during the Ascent portion. One of the last callouts is Shannon, and so they yell that out. And it's not that they're calling out the vessel, the drone, the Dragon recovery vessel, but actually Shannon, Ireland.
Right. Yep. Good catch, Sawyer, as always. Astro is asking in a super chat, settle a bet for me. Crew Dragon uses hypergolic fuels for aborts, correct? I've been informed that hypergolic fuels were banned. That is not the case, and Dragon does use hypergolics. Alex, what exactly is the propellant that it uses?
Yeah, so it basically uses a mix of what it's usually called NTO, which is nitrogen tetroxide, and the other one, boy, the name, it's called MMH is the acronym. It stands for monomethyl hydrazine. Thank God it's not UDMH, because that one is even harder to pronounce. But yeah, it's NTO, nitrogen tetroxide, and also monomethyl hydrazine. Those are the propellants that are used for both the Draco thrusters and the Super Draco thrusters.
Right. Then Johnny is asking, how much lag is there in the signal? I got 15 seconds in Denmark. The launch will happen for me at 22:49:15 UTC +1. I believe our live stream is very low latency, like on the order of seconds.
Give me a second to look.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, it's a few
Let's
seconds of the
see.
latency, and the official countdown clock in front of me compared to our clock are identical. So
Yeah.
Wow.
The T0 should be 21:49:11 UTC. So that is the T0 to the second.
Excellent.
You can see there's very little lag between our clock and the clock at the KSC press side. The delay is obviously the little delay there is just because of the the feeds coming through and everything, so it's normal. But yeah, that is where that countdown clock is counting down to 21:49:11 UTC.
Awesome. And then Sideshow Bob gifted a Red Team membership. Brandon Meyer with a $20 tip on tips.nasaspaceflight.com saying, love NSF and all you do. Keep up the great content. Thank you, Brandon, for the kind words and for the support. We appreciate both of them. Chris W. gifted a Red Team membership. And then Bloodhound with the super chat about something Alex had said. Anyway, moving on to some more of your guys' questions. Asher is asking, do we know why the launch got postponed a few days ago? And I think what they're referring to is the launch got pushed from yesterday to today. And did SpaceX ever give us a reason as to why, Sawyer?
Well, SpaceX. Oh well, go
ahead, Alex.
go. So I was gonna say that they really didn't say much other than the usual checkouts and preparations and things like that. I don't remember the exact wording though. I could look it up in just 1 second if you give me that second. There we go. Here, the additional time allows teams to complete pre-launch checkouts and data analysis on the vehicle. So this is like the usual talk from SpaceX when they need just a little bit more time to make sure that everything, both the rocket and also the spacecraft, are all clear to go to be able to launch. And usually that involves not only the spacecraft and rocket themselves, but also analyzing all of the data from previous launches, previous tests, and things like that. So everything is involved in there. And sometimes you need a little bit more time, and that's what basically happened there yesterday.
And in particular, you want to take that extra time for a mission like this because you have 4 people on board. So you want to make sure everything is exactly right, and even if you have the slightest question, they want to take a deeper dive into it. So it's, as Das says, and as I've heard the expression before, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground.
Yeah, and I guess this is a good moment, I guess, to talk. They were looking at 2 things for this flight ahead of the launch readiness review, because I basically listened to the press conference that they had a couple of days ago about this, and going into this mission they delayed the rollout by a day or so, precisely because they were working on 4 of the trunk of Dragon is connected to the upper stage by 4 connectors, and these 4 connectors, 2 of them had their torque was out of family apparently, and so they went out, they retorqued everything, they checked out everything, and they were able to roll out the rocket again. But also another thing that is debuting on this flight is there's a new type of connector between the drogue chutes and the main chutes on Freedom for this flight, and so that is one thing that they have added as well. And it wouldn't be surprising if some of these things they had to check them out last minute or something like that. That was something that other press people were also wondering about, Again, Axiom and SpaceX haven't said anything about that, if that was the case or not. But that was two of the things that they were working through before the launch readiness review, which should have happened yesterday morning.
Yeah, I think, one thing that's continuously stood out to me as one of the hard items on both Dragon and Starliner is parachutes. Like, it's remarkable how both companies have gone through just many, many iterations, and even after tons of drop tests, still find these small little things to improve. It attests to not only the continuous pursuit for increased reliability, but just how hard of a problem this is that both companies are working on.
Yeah, and I just
Yeah.
saw the cars from the ground crews leaving the launch area, so looks like we're getting clear here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're
the
about
clouds are, I just want to say here, the clouds are thinning out extremely quickly. They are now just a few thin, wispy clouds overhead, and it looks like it's clearing sort of from west to east. So right behind us you could basically see the sun, and the clouds are pushing outward. So I think we're looking okay here.
awesome. And yeah, we are about 30 minutes away from the events that we were talking about earlier starting to happen. So in 30 minutes, we will get verification that they're go for a propellant load, and then the subsequent events after that we have talked about with fueling of the vehicle and crew access arm retraction. In that time, if you guys have any questions for us, make sure you tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight, and we will hopefully answer your question. Going on to some more of those. Let's see. Space Podcast is asking, does SpaceX use different capsules for CRS missions, or do they just fill in the windows?
No, they use different capsules. So they have crew versions and cargo versions of the Dragon 2 spacecraft. They are slightly different built because the cargo Dragons, you think that it should be just as easy as just removing all of the crew stuff, but when you're basically when you're transporting cargo, you want to optimize how the interior of the capsule is arranged, and so there are things, for example, that are different in the welds and sort of the structure inside of the capsule differently from the crew version, precisely to be able to carry more cargo than otherwise. And so that's one of the things that is different. For example, they are differently built in that sense. The overall design is similar. They don't carry, for example, the cargo Dragons don't carry Super Draco thrusters because they don't really have any people on board to perform any sort of launch abort, and so that's one of the things that are different them. So they use different capsules for crew and cargo missions.
And with that, Dragon, I've got a post-ingress brief for you. Report ready to copy.
Just listen to this communication real quick.
Ready to copy.
Okay, Dragon, we are officially through the hurry up phase, and now we have a little bit of time to wait. Clock is at T-minus 113 and counting. Dragon and Falcon systems continue to look healthy, and vehicles are ready for a launch attempt today. Weather continues to look great, and we'll keep you updated if anything changes. How copy so far?
Very pleased to copy all so far, Jake.
Okay, I do have one item for you looking ahead in the timeline to the first Dragon burn on orbit. That's the phase burn at 22:33 Zulu. I have some info you might want to record. Report ready to copy.
Ready to copy.
Okay, for your awareness, we have a TDRS gap starting at 2225. That's 11 minutes before the phase burn, and it ends at the same time the burn ends. That's 2242. The impact is that we in Hawthorne will not have live data or comms during the burn. That said, pending successful on-orbit Draco checkouts, we will be taking the burn and will rely on onboard vehicle automation to halt the burn if necessary. After the burn, we'll get a data dump and catch back up with the vehicle. It's not unprecedented in our flight history to not have data during the burn, but I'm letting you know. How copy?
Okay, give us a minute here, Jake.
Sure thing, and let me know if you'd like any of that repeated.
Some interesting info there on the internal communications with SpaceX. And while we're waiting on that, Sawyer, could you take us over the trajectory of today's mission?
Absolutely. There I am, by the way, apparently. Hi, that's me at our little control table out here at the moment. First, just in case you're wondering what they were discussing, the phase burn is once they're in orbit, they do an additional burn of their engines to kind of adjust their orbit. Normally, they get communications through the tracking data relay satellite network, TDRS, as you heard.
Either way, we'll come AOS around the end of the burn. You guys will get the data, and then we'll talk about any deltas, correct?
Okay, I understand the confusion. I called burn start 22:33. It is actually 22:36. That's my mistake, and explains the 11-minute gap then between 25 and 36.
Yep, all clear now. Thanks.
Okay, that's all I had. Any questions from the crew here for the team in Hawthorne?
No questions.
Copy.
All right, there we go. They're just fixing up the numbers there. And again, that means that they will not have direct data coming from them during that time because there's no TDRS satellite that's going to be flying nearby or overhead. So they'll do everything automated on board, and then once the burn is complete and they get the signal back, they'll send everything down to Hawthorne to make sure everything is exactly as planned. Now, as for the trajectory that we were talking about as it goes up and before it does that phase burn, this is actually going to be going on a northeasterly trajectory. So you were used to Starlinks that go southeast. This one is going northeast, and that is because of the location of the International Space Station. The ISS is inclined 51.6 degrees, which happens to fly over Florida and Kazakhstan, where the Russians launch, and covers like 90% of the Earth that you could see from the space station. But for this launch in particular, if you are along the eastern seaboard, you have a very good chance of seeing it all the way up, even through the Carolinas. We've seen it before. So there is a good chance if you live anywhere along the East Coast, keep an eye out. Obviously, the further northeast you go, the lower on the horizon it might be to see it. But this is very unique in that sense. And then the second stage, once it's done, will also then burn up into the ocean.
Very good. Thank you, Sawyer. And then there's more photos of our setup for today's launch. I believe that's Max on top of that's Max on top of the VAB, right?
Yes,
Yep.
that is Max on top of
Yeah.
the vehicle assembly building. We've been trying to see if we could see him from our location down here, but we're blocked by some of the doors. But we're waving to him from down below.
This is actually such a place, like being on top of the VAB, none other than the VAB. It's pretty much one of the tallest buildings out there in Florida. Not the tallest anymore, but it's one of the tallest. And being able, like you can see there, for once, there's a camera that it's looking down at the rocket, not up. Right? Because it's actually pointing down at the rocket rather than up, and it's super cool. It's also like a cool angle for the liftoff shots, and I cannot wait for Max to take those shots, because man, it's like with the tower on the left, the strong back retracting, everything, like that's gonna be so cool.
Yeah, because think about it. All of our launch photos that we take down here are points, once it clears the tower, we're looking upward at the rocket. He'll be looking dead on at it, like right at the SpaceX wording on the booster. So it is such a cool vantage point. And again, just the fact of how historic the VAB is. He's standing on top of a building that has assembled every single rocket that has sent people to the moon. That's kind of cool.
That's a cool way of putting it.
Hmm.
It really stood out to me, when I went down to Florida for the first time as a space fan. You just start driving into the
Oh, look
Cape
at that.
area. Oh,
That's the view.
What it will look like.
Yeah.
I
That
cannot
view
wait
is
for
so
that photo.
cool.
Wow.
It's like the right alignment, the right angle to see sort of the tower on the left, when the Stromberg pulls out at liftoff, and the rocket going up. It's gonna be so awesome. Max, go for it if you're listening to
Yeah.
us.
No, but it is truly remarkable when you go to the Cape. You're driving in, and then all of a sudden, there's the VAB, just this enormous building sitting there, and then you start seeing all of the launch pads, and it's such a cool feeling. I need to go back down.
I have to say, it's kind of weird when, I do the drive-in, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, there's the VAB, turn it in. Then I stop myself and go, wait, just the VAB? It's like, you literally are driving right next to one of the most historic buildings in the United States and in the history of the space program, and you're just like, okay, yeah, I'll pass by it. Kind of weird, but cool.
Yeah, I am jealous of that view. Anyway, continuing on with questions ahead of launch. Now that we are coming up on 1 hour away from SpaceX sending 4 more humans to orbit, I believe, Alex, this will take them through to 46 humans launched, correct?
Yeah, indeed. So this is, well, this is funny because I guess it's gonna be 45.
Yeah.
Okay, 45, but 46 humans. So 45 individuals, 46 humans put into space or in orbit, which for SpaceX is pretty much the same. So yeah, I guess, because again, Michael, this is the second time that he's flying. There you can see that picture from him arriving at the launch pad. This is gonna be second time flying on a Falcon 9 and a Crew Dragon, and it's amazing that we are at this point where it's not only Michael, but as you mentioned before, it's also going to be Jared at some point with Polaris Dawn. We're going to have multiple people already flying multiple times on Crew Dragon. And then Walter, he's also flown before on Virgin Galactic's Spaceship 2. So that's also exciting that, there's this cross-breeding kind of thing, right? Between suborbital missions and also orbital missions. Definitely very interesting, and very excited to see all of these 4 guys to go up there.
Yeah, something interesting is that I believe that he would be the first commercial astronaut to fly both commercially suborbital and then commercially orbital. Obviously, there were some Mercury astronauts that flew on Gemini and Apollo and did that, but
Yeah.
in terms of now private space, that's unique. And then, of course, you have the commander, MLA for short, Michael López-Alegría. He has flown on Space Shuttle, he has flown on Soyuz, and now will fly twice on Crew Dragon.
Yep. It's a shame he didn't flew twice on Soyuz, or did he? I think it was twice on the shuttle. And you know what? Now I have to look it up. I actually didn't look it up. I'm sorry. I did a very bad homework.
No, it's
Okay.
STS-73, STS-92, STS-113, and then TMA-9.
Okay, so 3 shuttle flights, 1 Soyuz, and with these 2 Dragon flights. If he had done 3, 2, 1, that would be funny. Or even like 2 flights on Soyuz, 2 flights on Dragon, and then 2 flights on shuttle.
So then technically, if he does this, it will be 3, 2, 1. 3 shuttle, 2.
But it's but it's 3, 1, 2. It's not in the right order.
Since when does order matter?
For me?
Can't order it.
Yeah, I prefer my unordered sets. They're way easier. Anyway,
Dragon SpaceX.
quite the
I think that was
resume.
for a cabin fan. Go ahead.
Actually, Jake, it was for cabin temp, and we're feeling just a little bit on the cool side here, wondering what the options are for warming it up.
Copy. Understood. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
All right, some quick back and forth there with the crew.
Yeah. The
There's
astronauts
some-
do have thermostats that they can't really control while they're out on the pad, but they're cold, so they're literally asking launch control out in Hawthorne, or the controllers out in Hawthorne, saying, "Hey, any chance you could warm up the cabin for us a little bit, turn up the heat a bit?" So,
Can't you just put on another sweater?
what are the Christmas sweaters that they probably already own from shop.nasaspaceflight.com?
Hey, that would keep them nice and warm. And as you can see, as Sawyer was saying, we now are starting to see the beautiful blue sky with just a little bit of thin clouds above it as the weather continues to improve towards today's launch. As we heard in the communication about 10 minutes ago at this point, the weather is looking good for today's launch, and there will be another weather briefing. I believe it's around T-minus 15 minutes, correct, Alex?
Yeah, the very last one before launch is around that time. The very last one before fueling, I think it is coming up right now at T-minus 16 minutes. So that is sort of the timeline that they have. Obviously, when you get to T-minus 15, 20 minutes, there's not a lot of leeway there to be able to do more, like launch balloons and things like that, to get wind data. But yeah.
Right.
To equalize
Let's
low flow
see.
pressure, you should hear it. How copy?
Okay, we copy. We're standing by.
All right, just notification there to the
And
crew.
Dragon, I've got an update on the cabin temp, and it's not necessarily favorable. There's not much we can do at this point from the ground, especially anticipating the heating that will incur during ascent. I'd like to assess if this is something you think you can ride out for another hour here.
Absolutely, Jake. Just wanted to ask, but we understand what the priority is here.
Copy, Dragon. Yeah, appreciate you asking. Sorry we can't do more in this situation.
Always cool to listen to them solving these problems in real time. With that, we'll take some of your real-time questions.
By the way, just want to point out that the answer was no, they couldn't change the thermostat, and that would have been the first time, I believe, that they scrubbed a launch because the astronauts were too cold, if they hadn't gone ahead and continued, as we now are officially under T-minus 1 hour.
Indeed. Yeah, I imagine when they're like, we're about to fly to orbit, we can be cool for, another hour. I imagine that was an easy decision. Anyway, continuing on with some of your guys' questions, John M is asking, back to our communication, or back to our conversation earlier about SpaceX having many, many redundant communication channels between Dragon and Hawthorne, asking if loss of communication would be a valid reason for a scrub. And Sawyer, that would almost certainly cause a scrub, correct?
Exactly. I mean, you need to be able to communicate both verbally with the crew, as well as making sure you're getting data and information back from the spacecraft itself. If you're not getting any data or instrumentation readings from Falcon or Dragon, then that's an obvious no-go. But as mentioned, there are multiple different communication options. So that's why during that pre-launch, they test all of them, the space to ground, the air to ground, all of the different communication options. And then once they get into space and near the International Space Station, they get an additional option, which is station to ground, which loops them in not only with Hawthorne, but also with the crew aboard the ISS and the mission controllers in Houston, since they will then be entering the range of the ISS.
Right. And another important thing, I think, is even though, one of these communication channels being down may not be, the biggest problem, depending on which one it is, it could be a sign of a more important underlying problem that they would want to work out. So whenever they see something even really small, on the ground wrong. Like Sawyer said earlier, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. So with spaceflight, it's just always better to have an abundance of caution, especially when there are 4 people on top.
No, it's better to it's better to be you'd rather be on the ground wishing you were in the air than having to talk via air to ground. That's actually.
Yeah.
I haven't had enough puns today, so I had to throw one in.
We always appreciate it. Just like we appreciate all of the generous support from you guys. Chris W., one of our mods, gifting a Red Team membership, along with Jim Cavett, I believe for the 3rd time on today's show, providing support with gifting a Red Team membership. Bob Fillmore gifted 5 Red Team memberships. And then Out of This World is asking, everything guys, just want to say hi, watching with my wife from a very cold Oxford, England. Looking forward to launch Go Falcon, Go Axiom. Well, hope you and your wife enjoy today's launch. I have definitely heard from all of the folk here at NSF that the UK has been pretty chilly this last period of time. Josh is asking, is the new crew tower ready? If it is, why aren't they using it? So that's a good question, Alex, right? They were originally going to launch Axiom 3 from Space Launch Complex 40 using the recently completed crew access arm, but then that got moved to 39N. So why is that, and what mission are we expecting to use Slick 40?
Yeah, so the reason why they were going to be using Slick 40 for this mission originally is because they had delayed, basically they had USSF 52, right? And then they had Axiom and Axiom 3 and also the Intuitive Machines 1 mission. And so those 2 missions were scheduled around the same date of January, back when USSF was going to be launching around early to mid December 2023. And so that basically deconflicted both missions by launching Axiom from Pad 40 and Intuitive Machines from 39A, because Intuitive Machines is going to use the 39A Stromback because it's going to be fueled with liquid methane and liquid oxygen on the pad. And so it's going to be using all of those commodities that they already have at 39A. And therefore, that was sort of like a deconflicting kind of thing. But now that, so they had that USSF 52 mission being delayed, and that meant that the Intuitive Machines mission could not be performed in early January. And so that moved it to February. And what that meant is that 39A was free to be able to support Axiom 3 for this mission, basically. And this is important because right now, Pad 40 is undergoing major upgrades and modifications to be able to support the greater cadence that we're going to see from that pad in 2024. And so that is also very good in the sense that we here have the 39A launch, but the next Pad 40 launch is going to be NG20 with the Cygnus spacecraft. And by the way, I mentioned the Intuitive Machines 1 mission. That's going to be the next launch from LC39A in early February. I think it's currently scheduled for February 10th or something like that.
And a knowledgeable answer from Alex as always. We have a super chat from Matilda saying, the best commentators for covering these launches as always. Thank you. Greetings from Sweden. Have some friends there to see it live. Go Marcus and team. Yeah, it's always awesome that you guys tune in and to bring these streams to you guys. So thank you for your support. Going into some final questions before we start hitting some of the major milestones that we were talking about earlier. Let's see. Other side is asking, how slim is the launch window to rendezvous with the station? So Alex, what is today's launch window?
Today's launch window is instantaneous, so we won't have any sort of 2-hour or 4-hour window as we usually see on other flights. This one needs to target the orbital plane of the ISS, and so it needs to launch right on time. Today's launch is 21:49:11 UTC, and that's the launch time for today, which is 1 second long.
All right. Alrighty. Comrade is asking, I've seen this question a bunch very quickly. How long are they flying to the ISS for, Sawyer?
So the trip itself to the ISS, again, they'll be docking early Saturday morning Eastern time, and they will spend approximately 2 weeks up in space before splashing back down in either the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico, depending on the weather.
Awesome. And then finally, I've seen another question being asked several times of if this is the first time that a Dragon with humans is flying on board a flight-proven booster. And no, it is not. I believe they've done that. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but several times by now, probably more than 5. So yeah.
Yeah, but the boosters themselves have, if I recall, none of them have flown on any vehicles that have been reflown more than 5 times. So sometimes they'll be reflown on maybe a 2 or 3
Right.
flight-proven vehicle.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
SpaceX seems to like to keep these in the newer boosters in their fleets, right? This is B1080 flying today, and that's one of the newer boosters. They've flown through B1084 on USS F-52, but they haven't flown on some of the older boosters like B1060 in a while on these important missions.
One of the things that I'm excited about for at least not this mission, but the next one that it's gonna feature a Crew Dragon, which is Crew 8, which is gonna be coming up around late February. That is gonna be featuring the 5th flight of Endeavour. That's gonna be a record also because it's gonna be the first time a Crew Dragon is flying for, or any Dragon in particular, is gonna be flying for a 5th time, and that's sort of one of those exciting milestones that we're gonna look forward this year.
And also because the name is the best, so
It's
of course
Endeavour,
it's gonna make the
yeah.
history. Yep.
Yep, Endeavour is the best shuttle. Everyone on stream
Yes.
agrees. So, I mean, 100% of people agree that Endeavour is the best. Thank you for coming
Yeah.
to my TED Talk.
Yeah, and again, it is worth noting that all of them are named. So you have Endeavour, you have Resilience, you have Endurance, and then today's vehicle, Freedom.
Right.
And a yet
Then-
unnamed capsule, which will debut later this year as well. I cannot wait to see what kind of name the crew decides to put on that capsule.
Yeah, you literally stole my words from my mouth that there's another one that's coming later this year.
Beef!
Right. So we are 4.5 minutes away from hopeful when the SpaceX launch director will verify that teams are go for propellant load. And then shortly after that, the crew access arm will be retracted. So a few more questions before then. Todd Bott is saying, watching from uptown New Orleans, Louisiana, one day I'll make it up to the Cape to watch launch with y'all. Hashtag let's go. Well, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you get out there someday, because I haven't seen one, but everyone who I know who have seen a launch tells me that I'm missing out, so we need to go see one. And then Steve gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Awesome. Going back to some more questions, John is asking, how many times has Crew Dragon flown by now? Alex, do we know exactly how many times it's flown?
Well, this is going to be the 12th flight with humans on board for Crew Dragon, but we also had Limo 1, which is, I guess, the 13th flight. And then we also had the in-flight abort test, so that, I guess it counts. It's not orbital, but it kind of counts, so that will be, this is the 14th flight of Crew Dragon. And the overall Dragon flights, this will be the 43rd overall flight of a Dragon spacecraft. That counts Dragon 1 and Dragon 2, obviously.
Then how many times, you were just talking about how later this year Endeavour will fly for its 5th time. How many times are we expecting these Dragon spacecrafts to be able to fly?
Well, right now SpaceX is trying to get these capsules certified to fly up to 15 flights. I'm gonna guess that probably Endeavour is gonna be one of the capsules that is gonna be taken apart, sort of like what they did with B1058 and B1060 when they were, taken apart from the fleet and inspected thoroughly to be able to certify boosters to go up to 20 flights. I'm gonna guess that Endeavour is probably gonna do that once it completes its 5th flight. They're probably gonna take it out of the fleet and then undergo all of these studies to be able to make these capsules certified to go to 15 flights. That's gonna be interesting to see what SpaceX talks about that, but that's only my guess though.
Right. And we just got an enormous piece of support from Andy's dad with a $50 super chat saying, "Thanks for the coverage, guys. Another great job on your part." So that level of support is just so appreciated. So thank you very much for tuning in and providing us with that and allowing us to send Sawyer out in the field, allowing us to send Max and Julia out in the field to bring all of these views, to get some random guy from Spain on here to share his knowledge.
And launch. Stand by for abort instructions.
So thank you, Andy's dad.
T-minus 45
Looks like
minutes.
we had to go.
Both control rooms go into lockdown and remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control at this time. You may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Launch control copies, proceeding with arming crew arm for movement.
And there we have it. So Alex, what exactly is going on right now?
Yeah, so right now they're gonna be retracting the crew access arm. You can see there.
Well, there you heard it. We are go to proceed with propellant load in just under 10 minutes.
Crew arm.
Okay, well.
We are beginning to retract that crew access arm. Both the Falcon 9.
Well, there you have it. The crew access arm is being retracted at this point. It is gonna swing away just a bit, not all the way out, and then at liftoff, it's gonna be sort of like the Stromberg, but it retracts a bit more than the Stromberg. The Stromberg is like 1.8 degrees, while the crew access arm is, again, it's not all the way out, but it's a good distance away. And then when it is time for liftoff, it just swings all the way out.
Right, and I see a little bit of confusion in chat that I'll quickly clarify. That abort scenario that they just went over, they are not aborting, the mission is still on. What that is for is in the case that they need to abort, they want the procedures to be very clear. So before every mission, they go over the abort portfolio of exactly what call needs to be made on the net, depending on which situation. Hope that clarifies that, but we are still go for launch in 43 minutes from now. So from this point, we are very similar to a normal Falcon 9 launch countdown. So now that the crew access arm has retracted, here in about 4 minutes, Dragon's launch escape system will be armed. And then once it is armed, they are able to start propellant loading, which begins just like on every Falcon 9 mission, with RP-1 being loaded on both stages and liquid oxygen being loaded on the second stage.
SpaceX Dragon in work.
All right, so right now the crew is activating the launch escape system.
All right.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're going for arming of the launch escape system a little bit earlier than on their schedule, which is not unheard of. They want, as soon as the crew access arm is away, they want to start arming that sequence so that they can safely get away from the pad in...
We take every measure possible to ensure the crew has options at all times, including an escape in the worst of scenarios.
Right, and while we wait for confirmation of that, let me go over some just incredibly generous support that we've been getting over these last few minutes. Apocalypse Cow gifted 10 Red Team memberships. Then AberTac gifted 20 Red Team memberships. And then Bob Fillmore gifted another 10 Red Team memberships. And Blackhawk NZ gifted 5. So thank you all for those gifts. And if you guys got those, make sure you thank whoever you got it from.
And the crew access, the abort system is now armed. I was thinking about the crew access arm, sorry.
That launch escape system is now activated.
Excellent. And then we also have another $50 super chat from Eric with no message. So thank you, Eric, and just everyone else for tuning in today. As we are about to have 4 more humans go to orbit, which is, I don't know, always an exciting day. Sawyer, how is the mood down at the Cape?
The mood here is great. The press site is busier than usual, and a lot of the people here that I've been seeing and that we've been speaking to around here are foreign media, considering how international this crew is, where all 4 people on board have a connection to a country that is either entirely or partially within Europe. So it's been very cool to see all of these people from so many different countries, and now they're here for their first launch, and the excitement, it's really a fun atmosphere for this one here.
Yeah, I would imagine as awesome as Starlink missions or those are, it hits a little different when there's more serious risk and just that 4 people are about to witness something. Well, 3 people are about to witness something they've never seen before. Holy cow. From Air Bartek, a $500 super chat saying, "Thank you NSF, Trevor, Alex, and Sawyer. You guys provide some of the best commentary for spaceflight." Seriously, just thank you so much for that level of support. And it's my honor to be able to be here alongside people who are as knowledgeable as Alex and Sawyer are. So thank you, Alex and Sawyer. Thank you, Airback Tech, for just the awesome support. Thank you, Max, and everyone else for being in the field.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, the only reason we're able to be out in the field is because of your support.
Oh, wait.
Especially generous support like that.
I thought it was just one zero. Oh my god! Wow.
No, yeah. That's how we're able to have automated tracking cameras, our camera on the pad, the remote cameras. All of us out here are cameras that are out at the launch pad. It's all because of that kind of support, and we love bringing it to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, this is when words really fail me, at least. I don't sound super genuine like Jack and whatnot, but seriously, thank you so much. With that, we will continue on with our coverage here as we are 38 minutes away from launch. So that means that the stages are about to, in about 3 minutes, will be starting to be filled with RP1 and liquid oxygen on the first stage. With that, let's take a few more questions. Here's an interesting one from Starship 24 asking, how many Gs would be put on the crew in the event of a launch abort? And I think the answer to this question, Alex, is very dependent on when during the flight profile they abort, correct?
Yeah, so it depends a lot on the flight profile and when it is, as you mentioned, because they can control the thrust of the Super Dracos, and that thrust is basically how to say this? It is tweaked. The computers know when the launch abort is happening and what are the conditions, and so they know best what is the thrust setting that they need to put those Super Dracos. So early aborts, for example, on the ground, they will use higher thrust so that they can pull away faster, because it's obviously near the ground, and so you need to fly up and out. But once you're in the air, for example, and close to, like, past max Q, for example, then you probably don't need as much thrust and things like that. And
We're the engine on stage
they are
2
already
lights up and
preparing for
propels the second
the
stage,
propellant
along with our
load.
AX3.
They're already preparing for the propellant load on the second stage, so there was a call out there to warn the crew that the tanks are going to be venting ahead of that propellant load. So they're gonna hear that venting, which is quite awesome, to be honest, to be able to hear all of that. But yeah, the thrust of the Super Dracos can be adjusted depending on when on the flight that happens. And I think even if it's very late into the launch, then the
Second burn or
the
entry burn
abort
helps us.
doesn't even use the Super Dracos.
Yeah, they can do it with just the normal Dracos, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out, you were mentioning as it starts with all the venting and the fueling and everything, and the astronauts are going to be able to hear it. They train for that when they're doing all of their rehearsals at Hawthorne and during dry dress rehearsals and things like that. They will pump audio into the capsule that simulates what it will sound like with different venting and different prop loads and how the vehicle will creak and little things like that to try and prepare them for the actual thing, which they'll hear very shortly now in about a minute or so once it starts.
Yeah, and this is also a very large difference between the way that operations are on Dragon on top of the Falcon 9 versus Starliner on top of the Atlas V when it eventually flies the crew, hopefully this year. On Falcon 9, they load the crew on board and clear the pad out before they start loading fuel or oxidizer. When on Atlas, since they load those propellants far ahead of time, the crew are going to board a vehicle that's already fully fueled. So this is something that SpaceX calls load and go, and something that they had to kind of convince NASA was a safe way of handling the crew, which to me it seems like it would, if anything, be a safer way, since the astronauts are already in the most safe area there is inside of the Dragon capsule, which is pressurized and has an abort system, but NASA always wants to make sure their astronauts are safe. Going back over some support, first off, to shout out my friend who wants me to say hello to his friend Theodore. And then another super chat from Skull Kid saying, always love the streams, just wanted to say, I feel like they're trying to get me to say something. I'm not going to say that. Another super chat from Dude Man, a super chat from Starship24, and then Bideford, another regular around here, gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And then Andy's dad says, well, heck, I can't do 500, but here's another 50. Save these for puns tokens when needed. Well, Andy's dad, thank you for the just ridiculous amounts of support today. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure Sawyer appreciates the puns.
I especially appreciate the pun tokens a lot. And I mean, just being out here is really cool, just like the rocket is about to get cool as prop load has started. Gotta use one of the tokens right away.
That's why we have you on stream. And then Bideford, a regular around here, with 5 more Red Team memberships gifted. So Bideford, thank you for always hanging out with us and asking great questions and just being part of our community. We appreciate it. So now that we are into propellant load, Mr. Alejandro, could you walk us through the events that we're going to see up until T0 and liftoff?
Yeah, so at around T-minus 20 minutes, we're going to see that T-minus 20 minute event as usual. That's going to be when they chill down the liquid oxygen line to the second stage. We're going to have, right now they're loading liquid oxygen and RP1 on the first stage and only RP1 on the second stage. When that event happens, that is sort of around the same time that they wrap up the RP1 load on the second stage. 4 minutes later, we're going to see start of the liquefaction load on the second stage. We're going to go through all of the final stages of the countdown. At T-minus 5 minutes, the Dragon will switch into the terminal count. They're also going to be retracting the strum bag around a minute later, with the 12 cradle arms opening up, and the strum bag moving away about 1.8 degrees away from the vehicle. And so that's going to be sort of towards the end of the countdown to wrap up all of the fueling procedures. They're going to be preparing for the switch of the countdown control from the ground computers to the onboard computers, including Dragon. Both Dragon and Falcon now will basically align themselves together and be in sync at that time, and then going to be going into the final minute of the countdown, which is quite important, because that's when we're going to get that go from the launch director. So hopefully we're going to get that launch in just 32 minutes from now.
Excellent. Thank you for that, as always. And my gosh, the amount of support we're getting on this stream is just remarkable. Ground Umbilical Carrier Plates gifted a Red Team membership. I believe that's another name we see around here a lot. Anders became a PadRad member. Jeff gifted a Red Team membership. Then Steve says Google is so dumb, can't donate with ad block enabled. That's an interesting restriction that they don't want that. But thank you very much for all of your guys' support today, from Steve, from Andy's dad, from just everyone. It's been incredible. And just everyone for tuning in. Brian Green with another gifted Red Team membership, and Scott also gifted a Red Team membership. Thank you all very much for your support. Oh, and wow, I can't keep up. Snot Garden with a $20 super chat. Thanks for more great coverage. I got no question to Axiom today, or to ask today. Well, thank you for just tuning in and having support. We really appreciate it. Joe gifted 5 Red Team memberships, as well as RC Horseman, I think for the 3rd or 4th time today, gifting Red Team memberships. So thank you, RC Horseman, for always being there. And then a certain Ryan Weber, I don't know who that is asking, Team NSF, are you ... ready for it? I have to say thank you for both the Taylor reference and the question, Ryan. We appreciate it. And then Brian Green with yet another super chat, saying, hit that like button, Rocket Nerds. And that's a good reminder to, it does really help, and the channel out, it helps us just tremendously. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for liking, and thanks for the support. Then finally, Fred gifted another Red Team membership. Alrighty. Looking for more questions. Here's one for you, Sawyer. Westy the Third is asking the $1 million question. Will there be a jellyfish on today's launch?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's right on the cusp of when you might see a jellyfish. For those who don't know, that is when, as the launch gets higher and higher, you get right near the curve of the Earth, and it typically happens right around sunrise or sunset. That light hits the plume in just a way that makes it look like it's the top of a jellyfish, and it's a really beautiful, gorgeous color. Those typically happen approximately 1 hour before or 1 hour after sunset or sunrise. In this case, the launch is 1 hour and 1 minute before scheduled sunset. So it's iffy and maybe, so we'll have to keep an eye out, and also make sure that these clouds that are coming through give us a clear enough view here to see it, although those of you along the northeast corridor there, where this will be, keep an eye out, have a chance to see it as well.
Oops. Bit robotic there.
A little bit of robotics.
That would be a Starlink handover. Apologies about that.
Yeah, that's a cool thing, as we were showing in the image of Sawyer earlier. He's out there with a Starlink dish, which is one of the things that's allowing us to bring this coverage. So I just see 2 stars in that shot. Not only Starlink, but also Star Sawyer. So.
Oh, shucks, you're too kind. I'll give you a gold star for that one.
There we go. We're going to use those pun tokens in no time. Let's see. I see some questions in chat from John and others asking how to support. So there are two options. You can super chat on YouTube, or you can head over to tips.nasaspaceflight.com. And that's even better because then YouTube and Google doesn't take a cut. But thank you for everyone today tuning in and gifting and super chatting and providing tips. It's awesome. And speaking of that, Corona gifted a Red Team membership. And then Protimus Prime is asking or saying, I recall back in the late 80s or early 90s, there was talk of launch complex being built in Cape York Peninsula in Queensland, Australia. It might be an idea for a future video. I definitely hadn't heard of that. I do think at some point we're wanting to have more coverage over some of these other launch areas. And including ones in the UK, we have a team that'll hopefully bring us UK views at some point and coverage those once they start launching. And really all of that is thanks to your guys' support. The more support we get, the more, live units we can send out to wherever these launches are happening from.
Yeah. And if we cannot really, because sometimes obviously going to these places is a bit pricey and a bit complicated in terms of all of the stuff that you need to put together, but we can still talk about it, and we talk about it every Friday on This Week in Spaceflight whenever that happens. I know there's an Australian company wanting to fly an Astronaut rocket into orbit. Gilmour Space Technologies is aiming to launch a rocket, I think it's called Ares, this year, so that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, Alex is our local Twist writer, so any complaints or compliments about Twist, you know who to hit up.
Every Friday.
Every Friday.
Tomorrow, I guess. I actually have to finish the script.
Well, at least you don't have anything else to do today, right?
Yeah. I gotta watch a crew launch. You can see all of the vapors already there on the Falcon 9 as they load liquid oxygen onto the first stage. 25.5 minutes from now, we're gonna see 4 people going into orbit again. More people, more better, as Jack will say.
Yeah, we have a very interesting possibility here, too. The fact that you have the people that are on board the International Space Station, you have the people aboard the Chinese Space Station, then you will have the 4 crew members going up here, and then there's also Galactic 06 currently planned next week. So if that happens, there is a chance to tie for the most number of people above 80 kilometers at the same time.
Which is 20.
Yep.
Yeah, and
it's crazy. 20 people.
It is crazy. That galactic mission that Sawyer was just talking about is currently scheduled for no earlier than January 26th, which all indications seem to be that they're on track for that. But as Virgin Galactic goes into more airliner-like operations and these become more and more routine, they haven't been providing us with quite as many updates as I think some of the people want to remain more private and whatnot, which is totally understandable. As you can see on screen, we have a list of all of the upcoming events. So in 3 minutes and 45 seconds is when the T-minus 20 minute and 20 second vent will begin. This is the vent that we see from the TE, and this indicates that propellant or fueling of the second stage is complete, and they're hoping to start chilling those lines down and cleaning them ahead of liquid oxygen load, which begins, as you can also see, about 7.5 minutes from now. Then also during that time, about when stage 2 liquid oxygen load begins, we should hear the final weather forecast gets delivered to the crew, and then also some of the final communications between the launch team and Crew Dragon before they enter terminal count and startup closer to launch. But that's all coming up still in 23 minutes from now. And there's the official clock. As you can see, we're bringing this to you with like basically a second of delay, which is pretty remarkable that our team's been able to do this. Back to some support. Daylene said exclamation point likes, reminding all of us that we should go. I haven't even tapped the like button yet. What am I doing? Let me fix that real quick. And that takes us up to 3,000 likes or so. So thanks everyone who's clicked the like button and for reminding everyone to click the like button. And then Matilda saying, like if the crew wasn't cold enough, now the liquid oxygen load on top of that, soon getting those people warmed up when firing up. Yeah, I would imagine that the temperature throughout all the fueling is somewhat constant, since they're not too close to the fuel tanks. But during ascent, there's definitely some significant heating to the spacecraft, as they were talking about earlier during those communications.
Well, I mean, this is their time in the countdown to just chill, so get it. But as they mentioned earlier, though, even though it is cold inside now, that is done intentionally.
Right.
Well, the robot lords
actually create some heat and friction, and
there we go.
then it will warm it up as they go up.
Yeah.
During flight with the friction and the heating and the engines and all that. So.
Okay. He got a little bit cutting in and out, but I guess that was the robot overlords trying to avoid him from making any more puns.
I was trying to actually say something interesting. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think there's just a satellite handoff happening.
Yeah. Basically just saying that it's going to get warmer in the cabin as they launch. So through just the normal phases of flight. So they got to just chill out now and then it will warm up.
Yeah, we need more Starlinks for you, Sawyer. Let's see if tonight that bandy launch
I was going to
happens.
say, good thing tonight, just about 7 hours after, actually more like 6 hours after this launch, SpaceX is going for another launch on the Starlink Group 7-11 mission from Slick 4 East in Vandenberg. So as usual, it'll be 22 more Starlink V2 satellites. And with that, in 8 seconds, we should see a lot of gas from T. There it is. So there is the T-minus 20 minute and 20 second vent, as we were talking about. And this is very good indication that teams are still on track for the launch in just over 20 minutes. Going back to some more of your guys' questions, Andre is asking, do they have a zero-G indicator? And if so, do we know what it is yet, Sawyer?
We do. This is actually a zero-G indicator that will be flying for the second time. It also flew on previous Axiom mission, and that is GG, which is actually part of Build-A-Bear. So that will be the zero-gravity indicator that you will see inside the capsule, and once they're floating, then you'll know that the astronauts will also be able to float around. And it's adorable. It even has its own Axiom flight suit on, so yes, and also very rare that we see a reflight of a zero-G indicator.
Yeah, zero-G indicator -2 following the SpaceX convention. This is when the physicist in me has to get annoyed at the term zero-G since it's so inaccurate, but that is not the point of today's live stream.
It's microgravity, right? you will be that kind of person.
Zero normal force is what I think we should switch it to. It rolls right off the tongue.
So does zero-G. That rolls easier.
Anyway, to some more support, Paul with the super chat saying, did you say the UK is going to launch rockets? I believe the UK is working on 2 spaceports. Alex, do you know much about these?
Yeah, so one of them is in basically Saxavord in the Shetland Islands, and then the other one, I think it's Sutherland, I think is the name of the other one. So we actually featured both on a recent video talking about all of the stuff that is going to be happening in 2024. Yeah, there we go. That's the 0G indicator for this mission. But yeah, the UK is developing their own rockets as well. Non-government, but they're private rockets.
Right. Then Burak saying, great stream, thanks. I hope the crew the best flight. Well, thank you for your support and the kind words. Greg with the super chat, do they do another weather checklist? I'm in St. Augustine and ugly stuff heading their way. Yes, the weather is continuously monitored up until, I believe, T-minus 10 seconds or so. And at that point, it would be their last opportunity to abort for weather. But generally, if they are tracking weather, they've run into, I don't know, around T-minus 45 seconds when the launch director normally gives his go for launch. Then they'll say, nope, weather is not good. We are standing down from today's opportunity, which is when they would go into all of the fuel unloading procedure, which is, essentially the inverse of what they do to load the vehicle. And of course, all of that has to be practiced with the crew as well, so they're familiar with what everything sounds like in the event that happens, which it's happened a few times, I know, on Demo 2, and then a few launches since.
But a reminder, it is still, as of right now, everything is proceeding as planned to the launch about 16.5 minutes from now.
Correct. Then also coming up at T-minus 7 minutes, is the engine chill vent, and Julian is asking, does the T-minus 7 minute engine chill include chilling the Merlin vacuum engine?
Well, there's a little bit of pre-chill that goes on, and you can sort of see that pre-chill as there are vents on the interstage that allow basically all of the exhaust and all of the things that basically escape out of that procedure to be able to escape through those vents on the interstage, so that it's not accumulating in that closed environment. And so you see some of that as we get into the final minutes of the count. But the big chill down of the MVAC happens during flight, around T plus 1.5 minutes into flight. That's when they start the big chill down of the MVAC engine ahead of ignition.
Right. Then Apocalypse Cow, I think for the third or fourth time today, gifted 10 Red Team memberships. So thank you, Apocalypse Cow. Oh boy, I see in the back channel now there's going to be the arguments of, is it pre-chilling or chilling? Is it preheating or heating?
It's typical pre-chill, but I don't like pre-chill and preheat. It's like, it's just chilling it, but okay, whatever.
It's like pre-boarding when you're getting on the
look
airplane.
at that.
And that is shot by Max, who is on top of the VAB. On the left-hand side. So you can see that's kind of looking down at the vehicle, as opposed to SpaceX's cameras on the right, which are looking somewhat up at it. So that's just because Max has the awesome opportunity to be on top of the VAB for today's launch and landing. Because as we were mentioning earlier today, on this crewed mission, like all crewed missions now, the first stage will be performing a return to launch site landing. So once it does its part of the ascent, it'll boost back to land and attempt landing on landing zone 1. And that will use the new-ish entry profile where it'll have one engine during the entry burn and then 131 during the landing burn. So it's a little bit different from what our t-shirt on shop.nasaspaceflight.com shows, which is the typical engine configuration for launch, entry, and landing for Starlink missions. With that, let's head on to more of your guys' questions. Oh boy. The Max isn't on comms, thankfully, for this question, but Cannon Copeland is asking, Stubby?
No stubby nozzle, thankfully. In order to be able to do the RTLS for this mission, they need the MVAC to be the regular nozzle. Otherwise, if it were the stubby, then they will need the drone ship because it decreases a bit the performance.
Right. And do we have any good indications on how much performance is left on the table when they use the stubby nozzle?
Oh boy, I don't think they have talked about that in detail. Our guess is that it's probably a few tons less to orbit. That's sort of our guess.
All right. We've seen it fly a few times at this point, but not too many, including there was a CRS mission that had a stubby nozzle, correct?
Yeah, CRS 28. Yep.
Yeah. Anon gifted 5 Red Team memberships, and then W. Scott Howard with the super chat. How are you able to stream SpaceX's stream 5 seconds before SpaceX? Yeah, I'm not sure. That's beyond my expertise. But thank you very much for your support.
Through the magic of fiber, and I'm not talking cereal.
Yeah. I mean, both fibers are useful. Alrighty. SR71 Blackbird is asking, what does the expectation to go have before they proceed? Is there, if there's foul weather currently and expected at T-0, how far could they go, or how early would they scrub it? So this is what we were talking about earlier. They can scrub for weather into the T- seconds range, correct, Alex?
Yeah, so if, as you mentioned, they are able to abort manually up until T-10 seconds. But when we talk about abort, we talk about the countdown, right? This is different, just so that people are aware. This is different from the actual, when we say crew abort system, right? That is a completely different meaning. We're talking here about stopping the clock and sort of reverting back to a safe state and that sort of stuff. They can manually abort the countdown up until T-10 seconds. From their own words, it's just all automated.
Right. And that's one of the things about the launch countdown. At T-1 minute, so in about 10 minutes, the vehicle takes total control over the count. So I think SpaceX operators have until on the order of T-10 seconds where they can manually abort. And after that range, it is all entirely done on the vehicle side. With that, we have more incredibly generous support from Bideford with a $50 super chat saying, thank you all of the NSF team that I welcome watching. Please share a little with the Punmeister taking photos. Sawyer, I think you have a fan.
No, actually I don't.
SpaceX
It's
Dragon,
too cold
the
out here to
displays
have a
are
fan.
so configured, and do you mind if I say a few words here, Jake?
MLA, I do not mind at all. You've got the floor.
So first I want to thank our partners who had the vision and the conviction to help Axiom open access to humans to low Earth orbit, and they are the Italian Air Force and its various ministries of its government, the Space Technologies Research Institutes of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, and the Turkish Space Agency and its ministry, as well as the Swedish National Space Agency in tandem with ESA. And I also want to thank the team. If you're listening to this through an earpiece sitting in Hangar X and Launch Control or in Hawthorne and Mission Control, you're on the team. And the same is true of people who'll be sitting at those consoles and consoles just like them, and Mission Control in Houston and the Payload Operations and Integration Center in Huntsville. Same is true for all the trainers that helped us get where we are today with the crew ready to launch. And of course the engineers, technicians, managers, and executives who over decades designed, assembled, and are now operating the most complex vehicle in the world that we have the privilege to go visit. Same is true for the visionaries who conceived and developed this amazing rocket that we're sitting on and the beautiful and capable capsule that we're sitting in. And if you're in the Rescue Ops Center, you guys are on the team. And of course, so are our friends and families who have given us their love and support from the very first step of this journey. And last but not least, the team at Axiom Space, the people who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. To the four of us that are lucky enough to man the good ship Freedom at this point, are humbled to be on the team. We're grateful to our teammates, and we are go for launch. Plus ultra.
Copy all, Mike. As we just ticked through T-minus 8 minutes, I'll let you know you've got a whole bunch of people rooting for you here and indeed all over the world. Godspeed, Axiom 3.
And there we had the communications that we expected. But that did interrupt Bideford's super chat. Just wanted to thank you, Bideford, very much again for your support.
Really nice words
and
there
we
coming to us from.
also have to thank Sawyer, who's going to go take some photos of the launch. So Sawyer, I hope you enjoy it, hope it's awesome, and get some awesome photos for us.
Thank you very much. I will do my best, and I'll be back with you after launch and landing, hopefully, with some reviews of the sights and sounds.
Awesome. Enjoy it, Sawyer. Thank you. All right. So I guess with that, Alex, maybe it's worth going down one more time. What are we expecting in these final 6 minutes before launch?
Yeah, so right now they have started the engine chill down procedure. We're going to have shortly basically the wrap up of the RP1 load on the first stage. Then Dragon will transition to internal power at T-minus 5 minutes. And I just heard stage 1 RP1 load is complete, so there you go. And then we're going to have a strong back retraction around T-minus 4.5 minutes. The liquid oxygen load will complete on the first and second stages at 3 minutes and 2 minutes, as you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen. And then at T-minus 1 minute, Falcon 9 will enter a startup sequence. That is when the ground computers hand over control to the onboard computers, both on Falcon 9 and also on Dragon. Dragon will enter what is called the countdown sequence, as they call it, sort of like it's enter the countdown or something like that, the call-out says. And that'll also get us through the last minute of the countdown when the launch director will verify go for launch. And then hopefully in 5 minutes and 34 seconds, we're going to see that Falcon 9 lifting off.
Right, and then after liftoff, there's the somewhat usual sequence of events that we have at this point. First will be max Q at T plus 58 seconds, followed by the in this case, four events that are quickly back-to-back. First will be main engine cutoff of those 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, followed shortly after by stage separation 3 seconds later, and then 7 seconds later the second stage engine will ignite for the first time. Then after another 7 seconds, the boost back burn on the first stage will start. So this is where they will ignite 3 engines on the stage to help send it back to land. That burn will last about 45 seconds before shutting down, before the entry burn will start, which will last 11 seconds, and then the landing burn, which is on the order of 17 seconds. During all that time, the second stage will continue taking Dragon on its way to orbit, with second engine cutoff 1, the only second engine cutoff for today's mission, occurring at T plus 8 minutes and 48 seconds. At that point, the Dragon and stage will coast for a few minutes before Dragon separates from the second stage at T plus 12 minutes. And then a few seconds after that, T plus 12:46, Dragon's nose cone open sequence will begin. And then at this point is when Dragon will start doing all of the checks on orbit ahead of starting the phasing burns. And then also after Dragon distances itself a little bit from the second stage, as we mentioned earlier, the second stage will perform that deorbit burn, splashing down roughly around New Zealand. And with that, we are 3 minutes away from launch, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. We'll take a few more, or go through a little bit more of you guys' support with a ton of gifted memberships. Paul became a PadRed member. Alan gifted a Red Team membership. Corona, for the second time on today's stream, gifted 5 Red Team memberships, as did Steve, and then Brian gifted a Red Team membership. Alan gifted another Red Team membership, and became a PadRed member. So thank you all for your very generous support. We really appreciate it. With that, we'll do like a few last questions from everyone. Here's one from Snow for you, Alex. When do you think Dragon will fly more than 4 crew on board?
I don't think it'll fly more than 4, at least on a nominal situation, unless it's a very experimental flight.
Right.
Yeah. Right now, they are going through the last few minutes of the count. The first stage is fully loaded with propellants. The second stage is wrapping up liquid oxygen load as we speak, and we shall have that final few seconds of the load in just a few seconds, as I was mentioning.
Right. And SpaceX just a few...
And stage 2 load is complete, so Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with propellants ahead of liftoff.
Yeah, and SpaceX just tweeted that teams are keeping an eye on the weather, which is now 60% favorable for liftoff. So we will hear that decision here shortly, whether it is good enough for launch. As we approach Falcon 9 entering startup at T-minus 60 seconds. At this time, the tanks on the vehicle also pressurize to their flight pressures, which ensures that during launch, they're nice and sturdy, so there's no buckling or anything like that. And that's happening all here in 8 seconds.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There's that
Dragon is in countdown.
confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup and Dragon is in countdown, which means that the vehicles are now controlling the final seconds as we lead up to liftoff.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
And there's confirmation from our flight director.
Go for launch.
We are go for launch.
And there is confirmation that if everything goes well in the next 30 seconds of the countdown, these 4 crew will be lifting off on their journey to the International Space Station in just about 20 seconds. Coming up on 15 seconds from that event, keep an eye at the bottom of the vehicle where we will see a green flash, and that will be the start of engine ignition at T-minus 3 seconds. T-minus 5. We'll stay quiet during liftoff.
3, 2, 1, ignition, engine full power, and liftoff. Go Axiom Space.
Further beyond, opening the door for more to follow. Godspeed AX3.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Of course, if you are just joining us, this is the launch of the Axiom 3 launch to the International Space Station.
Observed a successful liftoff as we are 90 seconds after launch now.
Into flight. The next event we have is MVAC chill, similar to what...
MVAC chill underway.
There's that call telling us that, again, we're flowing a little bit of that super chilled liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call there was one of the abort mode callouts that the crew is calling out as they are making their ascent on Falcon 9. Now, we're less than 30 seconds or a few seconds away from 4 events that will happen in rapid succession. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, as it's there on the bottom of your screen, stage separation, ignition of the first stage engine, and the first stage's boost back burn.
Stage 1 throttle down.
That call telling us that the engines are beginning to throttle down.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
SpaceX Dragon 2 Alpha.
Some loud cheers here as we can see that the
Stage 1 boost back startup.
first and second stages have separated. A beautiful view there. The brighter light is the second stage under power of the MVAC engine. That first stage booster is now heading back toward the Florida coast. One thing I love about daylight launches is we're going to get some amazing views. We should be able to...
Here we have views of the crew on board. I imagine that was quite the ride for them. So Alex, now that we are about 3 minutes after launch, what events are we going to see on the first stage, which is on the left, and the second stage, which is on the right?
Yeah, so right now the first stage is under its boost back burn. It will shut down in just a few seconds, and I think that is shut down. And in Zone 1 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Meanwhile, the MVAC engine continues to fire. All of the 4 happy people on board Freedom they are riding that MVAC engine right now uphill into orbit, and so far everything is continuing to go nominal. Propulsion and the trajectory looks good so far. All of the callouts have been very again. So anyone, if you're out there at the Cape, you're gonna hear those sonic booms
or something around that, because you all possible. And in fact, the first crewed mission with an RTLS trajectory was Axiom 2, if I remember correctly, last year. And now SpaceX has done it for all of the crewed missions, including the ones that they do for NASA. And all of that should be coming up here at T plus 6 minutes and 18 seconds, so about 20 seconds away. And on the right, you can see the second stage, the engine glowing nominally, as we expect, as they switch between views.
No stubby MVAC.
And
there we go, that's the entry burn.
And there's shutdown. That entry burn's a little bit shorter than the website says, but that's pretty normal for these missions, because that's not a time-based burn. They do it purely based on telemetry of when they should start up and shut down. So if based on engine performance, it can be
Look at that.
And now there's it entering,
flying through the clouds.
Ooh, to another layer of clouds. We get to see it twice. And now you can really see with those grid fins, the booster's not coming straight down. It's generating a little bit of lift, so kind of flying a little bit at an angle toward the ground. And there's the Cape. It's screaming down, and there is 1 and 3 engines now up. There we go. There's a successful landing of B1080, which is now B1080-6. I believe that was SpaceX's 191st consecutive landing and 165th total.
That's always so cool. But as always, this is the main mission. 4 people going into orbit. about a minute away from that seco time. It's always so cool that now they are able to also bring back the booster to land, apart from launching 4 awesome people into orbit, of course.
Yeah, and like Alex said, this is the part that actually matters. With second stage engine cutoff expected at T plus 8 minutes and 48 seconds. Let's see. And on the right, you can see all of the various minor vibrations in the nozzle. Those are all completely normal. And to be expected, especially now that they're starting to throttle down the engine as they get close to shut off, which should have occurred by now. And there it is.
There we go.
So now, as we mentioned, the stage will coast for on the order of 3 minutes before Dragon will separate from the second stage. And I believe the separation mechanism is explosive bolts, correct, Alex?
Can you repeat that, please?
The second stage will deploy the Dragon spacecraft with explosive bolts, correct?
Yes, there are 4 frangible nuts on the connections between the trunk and the second stage, and so that those bolts will basically be broken off, and the second stage will release the spacecraft.
Yeah, and
it's the only few explosive bolts that they have on any SpaceX hardware.
Right. A lot of like stage separation is all done with pneumatics and latches, same with fairings and even the ground systems. There are not really any explosive bolts. But with that, I believe we have the pun master himself back. Sawyer, do we have you?
Indeed you do.
How was it?
Oh, the sound on that one was absolutely amazing. With the low cloud deck, that one, you could really feel that one. There are some where, it vibrates and you kind of feel it, and then there are ones where it vibrates in your whole body and even your clothes feel like they're shaking. That was this one. So that was absolutely amazing. Unfortunately,
Oh,
we
look
didn't
at
get
that view.
to see.
Yeah. Holy cow,
Oh,
the
wow.
sun setting over the engine nozzle. Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, we didn't get to see the entry burn or landing burn, but we heard the sonics. So
That's
Right.
awesome.
And there you can see the crew. I imagine they're feeling nice and no normal force right now as they're free falling.
By the way, I've heard you call out that they are indeed on a nominal orbit insertion, so that was a
Excellent.
good ride from Falcon 9.
Thanks for flying Falcon, as they like to say.
We may hear that soon. They're about to deploy.
And then on the right, you can see the pad view of DOS's favorite view of a launch pad with no more rocket on it after a launch into orbit. And that especially hits different when there are 4 people on top.
Next launch in just a couple of weeks with the Intuitive Machines launch.
Yeah, well, SpaceX's next launch is in a couple of hours with Starlink.
That is true. The next launch from 39 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's SpaceX's mission control at Hawthorne. You can see the Dragon spacecraft in the background.
About to deploy.
Yeah. So this view, I believe, is looking up the trunk of Dragon, and there we have deploy of the Dragon spacecraft.
Yes, freedom is free.
As you can see, Dragon has separated from the second stage. A pretty cool view here looking up at the heat shield that will return the AX-3 crew back to Earth in just about 2 weeks. So this is our first view of AX-3 flying free.
Indeed. I always love the shot of now Dragon slowly coasting away.
And one of the things that we may see here is now they prime all of the... Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Wow, look at that.
Great ride to orbit.
I think you're demonstrating the ultimate in reuse, a reused Commander, a reused Dragon, and a reused Falcon. Or maybe flight experience is a better word. Enjoy space.
And Axiom 3.
No, Thurston. As I was saying, it's a team sport. Thank you, guys.
And Axiom 3, this is your launch director here. Walter, Alper, and Marcus. Congrats, welcome to your first flight on Dragon. Mike, on the other hand, welcome to the Dragon Frequent Flyer Club. I imagine you'll have enough miles to qualify for platinum status after this flight. Godspeed, Axiom 3, cheers.
Mark, thanks to you and your team. We're very grateful up here.
So some back and forth between the AX3 crew as well as AX3 Chief Engineer Bill Gerstenmayer.
And there we had, as always, the slightly comedic communication between ground operators on the Falcon side, who's, now that they're separated from the second stage, their job is over, and the Dragon spacecraft itself. So now all of the communication whatnot is left to the mission control focusing around Dragon, and with the comedic that
the reuse
line
commander.
they could have. Yeah,
it's MLA-2 because it's his second flight on Dragon.
And also that he has enough miles for the Platinum Club.
That was a good one.
So yeah, another
one of the centerline cameras, we could watch the nose cone.
The crew's getting right into it. I love it.
Dragon, we copy on the request. And Dragon, we expect that will automatically happen in the state machine here imminently.
Yeah, as they're talking about right now,
So with that,
Dragon
we are going to
nose
throw
cone-
it back over
We see
to...
hooks still traveling.
Okay, we stand by.
Yeah, so they're talking about the hooks on the Dragon nose cone, which I can't remember how many hooks there are, but they latch in, and then they slowly deploy these hooks so that they can open the nose cone, which gives them the forward Draco thrusters and docking port.
Yeah, for docking they use all 12 hooks, but for the nose cone they only use 6 of those. So they use the same interfaces as you mentioned for docking that they use for latching the nose cone. So they obviously need to open those hooks ahead of opening the nose cone.
Dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
And confirmation that we're getting nominal checkouts of those Draco thrusters on board Dragon.
All right. Those confirmations were cool. Because once they separate from the second stage, they prime all of the thrusters, they fire them, and it's always amazing when you see that.
Yeah. It's also always cool seeing the crowd at Mission Control excited about launching more humans into orbit on top of Dragon. But with that, Alex, what is coming up for both the second stage, which still has one more minor thing left to do that's not, that doesn't have too much to do with the mission itself, and then on Dragon itself?
Yeah, so right now the second stage should be preparing to perform its deorbit burn. It'll be basically disposed of in the, I think it's in the Pacific Ocean for this one, but it might be the Indian Ocean. Sometimes it kind of depends, but it's sort of around that point in the orbit where they dispose of it. And then also the Crew Dragon Freedom is now on a basically on a path. It'll perform multiple burns across the next few days. And then on January 20th, there's the scheduled docking with the ISS at 5:15 a.m. Eastern Time. That will be 10:15 UTC as well. And so that'll be docking to the Harmony front docking port. Basically, there are 2 docking ports, one to the zenith and one to the front. This is going to be to the front of the Harmony module on the ISS. So it's going to be, again, January 20th at 5:15 a.m. Eastern, 10:15 UTC.
Very good. And yeah, there's just all the views that we like to see of Dragon successfully on orbit, the second stage getting ready for its deorbit burn, making sure there's no junk left in space, and then the launch pad being empty. There we have it. Alright, while we wait for some more views and replays to come in, oh, that looks like the
There we
nose
go.
cone opening.
That's good news. Because with the nose cone open, now they can fire, well, it's not open fully yet, but once it is fully open, they can fire the bulkhead thrusters on the basically on the front of the Dragon. Those are the ones that they use for the major burns. So that when they do these big burns to be able to go up and change a bit the inclination here and there, those are the ones that are used. For close proximity operations to the ISS, they use the other ones that are on what they call the integrated service module at the base of the capsule, and those are the other 12 Draco thrusters that they use to fine tune the burns of Crew Dragon. So those are sort of the differences that they have there. But this is very important for them. Not only, again, I mentioned the burn, but they also need to dock to the ISS, I guess. So they also have the docking port there, the hatch to ingress the ISS. A lot of the sensors as well are located on the front of the Dragon. So that is always very important to have, that this opens properly.
Right. And there it looks like the nose cone is almost fully deployed. It's pretty crazy, I must say.
You can see there the latches.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy how routine feeling these crewed missions are from SpaceX now. Like what? This was 12 or 13 with Crew?
The 12 with Crew, overall for Crew Dragon 14 if you count Demo 1 and in-flight abort test.
Man, that is awesome. But during launch, we got a bunch more support from everyone, so I'll quickly go through this. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, for liking. Let's thank some more people. Barack saying go to all of the astronauts and hello from Turkey. Daleen saying like the stream, please. Yes, please do like the stream. It really does help us. I know it's like the usual YouTube thing of like and subscribe, but it really does help us. So thank you for encouraging people to do that. Thank you for those who have liked the video. Hunters Run Adventures gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Matilda with another super chat saying almost 30,000 people watching. Remember to hit like. Another very kind offer or reminder from the community to hit that. Old Gamer became a Capcom member. Alan gifted a Red Team membership. Brian Green gifted another Red Team membership. And then Alan with another super chat saying, wow, the clouds during re-entry was amazing. Yeah, that was really cool. I think shortly we should have some more replays of that and some photos from our wonderful photographers. Corona gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Alan gifted another Red Team membership. And then a $2 super chat saying, please shout out Liam and Aiden, enjoy the launch. Well, I hope they enjoyed it. And hello, Liam and Aiden. And then Ali gifted 50 Red Team memberships. So thank you so much, Ali. That is so generous. And if you got one of those, make sure you thank them. I think that's wow, 50 more Red Team memberships, 150 in total. Holy cow. Thank you so much. Seriously, and if you got those, make sure you say thanks to Ali and check out all of the exclusive behind the scenes content that we have, and now they're slowly coming to the back panel of all of the gifted memberships. Thank you so much. And with that,
cabin camera is soon to be configured. Your go for suit doffing.
Copy. We'll put 4.012 in work.
All right, so that call out there just saying that the crew is clear to take off their suits, as I had mentioned.
Yeah, as Kate was in the middle of saying, they are now able to have the astronauts take off their suits now that the riskier portions of the mission are over. I believe they will re-don them for some of the burns that are upcoming, correct, Alex?
Yeah, usually as you mentioned, right now they're doffing their suits, and so they need to remove the cameras and things like that so that they conserve their privacy. And they just heard
You can also
they
track
just said that the
Dragon's
cameras are
flight on
external, so that is
SpaceX.com.
pretty much KK. But yeah, they have the cameras external so that they are not, you know, you kind of need some privacy up there in orbit. And so those suits are not going to be put on unless there's some kind of emergency, or once they go through that final phase of the rendezvous to the ISS, they're done again, the suits, and be basically strapped on their seats for docking. So that's going to be one of all the things that they're going to have to do with those suits.
Yeah, and I actually see an interesting question in chat right now from Corvus. When we said that this is Dragon 2's 14th mission, if you count in-flight abort and DM1 along with all of the Crew Dragon's 14th mission, and they're asking, would you count pad abort test? Alex, what is the reason why we don't count that as one of Crew Dragon's flights?
Yeah, so one of the things is that the pad abort test was not performed with a proper Dragon 2. That was a Dragon 1 pressure vessel that basically had the outer shell sort of molded. Because when you look at Dragon, you think that the capsule is just that the shape of the capsule is just basically where the people are located, but there's an inner portion of it, right? There's like an inner pressure vessel to it, and then outside of the pressure vessel, they install all the propellant systems, the propulsion systems, and then they cover all of that with the white exterior that you see. So what they did with the pad abort capsule is it was a Dragon 1 pressure vessel, and then they put outside panels that were basically in the shape of the Dragon 2. But it was not even on the final shape. Because one of the reasons why they did the in-flight abort test with an actual Dragon 2 was, and not with that one, was because in between they changed some of the outer mold shape. I'm not sure why, but that's basically what happened. And to basically in order to have a better aerodynamics during flight, they used an actual Dragon 2 capsule for the in-flight abort test. So that's the reason why I don't count the pad abort test, because it's not a proper Dragon 2.
And that's the same reason why you also don't count any of the I think it was the Firefly spacecraft hops that they conducted in McGregor, correct?
Yeah,
or sorry,
well,
Dragonfly, not Firefly.
Dragonfly.
Yeah.
It was not even hop per se. It was just like it was hanging
Hover.
from a crane, and then they hovered. Yeah. So those were the other tests as well. Just like we don't count, for example, the landings from Grasshopper or Falcon 9R Dev 1. Like
Right.
we don't count those. We count the ones that actually flew.
Yeah. Well, with that, in the meantime, when we've been going over that, Ali donated 50 more Red Team memberships.
Wow.
I think that's 200 this stream from just Ali. So seriously,
That's a lot of support.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Those are, well, how much was it again?
By the
200?
way, just a heads up, the strongback is retracting again.
Oh yeah, it's
Retracting or like
it's
Going
lifting
back
up.
into position.
Yeah, it had been lifting, like it lifted up a little bit around T-14 or so, or at least I kind of saw it, and then it's moving again, I think. But yeah, if that's a lot of people that now will have access to Red Team. Basically, things like photos, member photos, videos, exclusive videos, behind the scenes things, for example, like that. So that's a lot of people that will be able to enjoy that.
Well, the good news is I think she just donated 100 more for 250 in total now.
Boy,
Wow.
I'm speechless right now. Well, you're gonna have a lot of pictures to be able to, because this flight, we had Max up there in the VAV. It's gonna take a little bit, but I think Sawyer has already some pictures of this launch.
Yeah.
I
And
do indeed.
this is just some of the member content that you get from those memberships that everyone's been donating. So, holy cow, thank you to everyone for the support today. Anyway, Sawyer, tell
really
us about your
appreciate that
shot.
support.
And definitely
So, yeah,
lots more to see, because this is Sawyer. We also had Julia and Max out there. Max on the top of the VAV, which is quite an exciting opportunity for us to have. And definitely looking forward to those pictures. More pictures from Sawyer, I guess, right, Sawyer?
Oh, I've got plenty more still to edit that'll be going up, and then there's still the remote cameras to pick up as well, so we'll see what those get. I know Max had a GoPro with him at the VAV. Julia and I had a behind-the-scenes camera running as well.
Wow.
So there's a lot of members' content to come, both in terms of photos from Max and myself and Julia and all the remotes, and the videos that we've been taking. So lots of good content from this one.
Yeah.
I
And
cannot wait to see that.
Yeah, on screen you can see one of Sawyer's photos from today's launch of LC-39A, the water tower, or not the water tower, the liquid oxygen tank on the right for Starship, the water tower on the left, the TE, just everything in one shot. Sawyer, great job.
Thank you.
And as we said, many, many more of these to come. Then, I think now we get to show the goodies of some replays, if Mr. Kevin Michael Reed is ready. And here we have on the left the replay, on the right the live view of the pad right now.
It's always so cool to see it lip off the pad.
Yeah.
Oh, we have audio, I think.
Oh yeah, Sawyer was not kidding when he said the audio from today's launch was fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
depending on what you're using to listen to, whether it be that microphone or my ears, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it kind of shows how powerful the launch audio was.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
actual liftoff itself on the broadcast, I'm sure, sounded great.
Yeah. But just that you can just tell it was super powerful. Here we have the wider view of liftoff with the clock, the American flag, and the whole press site.
You can hear the people counting down.
Yeah, this must be Julia's then. Maybe.
It's always so cool to see the Stromback throwback. And the Cruxus armor, there you can see how it also pulls out. And of course,
And this was Sawyer's vantage point, correct?
Correct. Julia was right next to me where I was, and this is her track.
I think that camera did a good job of highlighting the audio that Sawyer was talking about.
Yeah, and also how hard it is to track one of these rockets. You see it lifting off, and yeah, it's going slow at first, but then it starts moving really, really fast. So,
Moving really, really fast and getting really, really small.
yeah, it's always cool to see that Stromberg also venting right now. Like, I guess this is just like final purges and things like that to save everything. Not to repeat myself, but it's also like the like the OLM vent at Starbase, because we also see the OLM vent going for quite some time after liftoff.
Yeah,
we're
basically
always
clear out all the lines and resafe everything. Because I mean,
Mm.
they are expecting to have us out at the launch pad like at probably about an hour from now. So safing everything, clearing everything out, and basically
Yeah.
making it so crews can go out and get ready to modify it for the next launch.
And as someone
Yeah.
said in chat, one day we may see OLM vents also at Cape Canaveral. Just some time away. We don't know how far away, but sometime soon.
Soon,
Yeah.
according to Elon time.
Well, with that, let me just thank the last remaining support. Anonymous user became a Red Team member. Alan gifted 5 Red Team memberships, and Maya gifted 5 Red Team memberships. So I just have to say again, from all of us here at NSF, the support today has been insane with the gifted memberships, with the massive super chats, with the tips, with just everything. So thank you to everyone who provided financial support, no matter the size. It is just as we say, it is what allows us to do what we're able to do. And then also just thank you everyone for tuning in to our live stream. Thanks for leaving likes. Thanks for showing up and being part of our community. It really it means a lot to all of us. Oh, and it looks like just as we are going to wrap, we have another $50 super chat from Brian saying Ali should get a free NSF t-shirt. Just saying this should help with that and maybe some leftover coffee and bacon. And since I have more room to type, why did the cow jump over the moon? He didn't make it. It was an utter disaster. Oh.
Ooh, I like that one.
Well, thank you, Brian. Just thank you, seriously, everyone today. That is insane. I also need to thank all of my co-hosts that I had the honor of being on stream with today. Sawyer, thank you very much for going out, getting us those photos, and all of your wise words on stream.
Their words. Wise is stretching it a bit, but thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be out here. These crew launches do be hitting extra different because, there's 4 people that were on that rocket and that are now in space. So glad we had a great liftoff. Glad we had a great stream. And Godspeed Axiom 3.
Indeed. And then a man with many, many wise words, and just the knowledge of Alex always blows me away. Alex, thank you for joining us on stream today.
I also have a lot less wiser words. I just don't use them a lot here. But yeah, always exciting. Man, when we have people going into orbit, I always smile because it's like so amazing that we have this capability. And again, I cannot emphasize as a European that we don't have our own capability, but at least, through SpaceX, through Crew Dragon, through Falcon 9, this is a thing that governments on their own can be able to afford to accomplish. Like, you may not have the budget to form your own space program, but these enables, being able to fly your own people and being able to do your own research up in orbit. And it is quite amazing that we live in that era right now. And hopefully it'll get even better in the future.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first of what's expected to be 5 crewed launches for SpaceX in this year. Then on top of that, we have Starliner, which is expected to fly, and, the Soyuz continuing to fly, and all the Chinese missions. So it really is an amazing time to be alive. Also amazing of Jay and Gage in the back end. You didn't hear them on stream today for their support. And then also Max Evans and Julia Bergeron out in the field with more photos for our members, hopefully later today. Then finally, producing today's live stream is the one, the only, Mr. Kevin Michael Reed, as you can see up in the top right of your screen. And then finally, I just have to give one more massive thank you to our supporters. I've been your host, Trevor Sesnick, a writer here at NSF. Thank you all for joining. See you on the next one.
and here we go.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger and roll, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside FTE off. Bring in FTE off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go. Indeed. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?